romance. You should congratulate me. I'm going to move over, sorry. You should congratulate me. My wife and I, we just had twins, and they seem okay. 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 little girls. But you know the feeling. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, because that's how it is when things get too happy. I keep expecting to wake up from this beautiful dream. I mean, back before I was married, I had this one girlfriend who was fat. We were both of us fat together, so we got along. That girlfriend, she was always testing us on new diets to lose weight, like eating nothing except pineapple and vinegar, or nothing but green algae from an envelope. And she was suggesting we take these long walks together until she started to shed the pounds. Her hips just melted away. And you never saw anybody so happy. Even then, I knew something would wreck it. You know the feeling. When you love somebody, you're happy to see her happy. But I knew my girlfriend was going to dump me, because now guys with careers and health insurance were getting her on their radar. I remember that she was pretty and funny before, but now that she was getting so skinny, it was obvious that she possessed vast, untapped reserves of self-control and self-discipline way out of my league. And my friends weren't any help, because they were all circling, waiting for us to call it quits so they could date her. And then it turned out it wasn't the pineapple or the self-discipline, because she found out that she really had cancer. But she slimmed down to wearing a bitchin' hot size 2, just before she died. That's how I know happiness is like a ticking bomb. And how I met my wife is because I wasn't going to date anybody, not anymore, no way. So I was taking the Amtrak to Miami. It was the year of Palahniuk in Miami. And I packed my tent and wrapped my sleeping bag to protect my bomb, so I could camp out all weekend like a Grizzly Adams. And I walked into the bar car on the train. You know how sometimes you just need to leave the friends and the sobriety behind for a few days. I walked into the bar car, and there's this total stone-cold fox pair of green eyes looking right directly at me. And I'm not a monster. I'm not some reality show blimp stuck in a hospital bed eating buckets of fried chicken all day. But I can understand why guys would want to work as guards in women's prisons or concentration camps, where you could just date good-looking prisoners, without those babes always saying, "Put a shirt on," or asking, "Do you always have to sweat so much?" But I was on the train, and here's this goddess wearing a Radiohead t-shirt cut off to show her bare middle, and her jeans sag down to where there ought to be bush showing, and she's wearing Mickey Mouse and Holly Hobbie rings around every finger, holding a bottle of beer to her beautiful lips, and looking at me down the length of that brown bottle, just an ordinary MGD, not some pussy microbrew in a green bottle. And guys like me, we know the score. Unless you're John Belushi or John Candy, no hottie is going to put you in that kind of an eye lock. So right away, I know enough to look away from her in shame. The only reason why a girl like her would talk to me is to break the news that I'm a gross fat pig, and I'm blocking her entire view of the ocean. Know your limits, I always say. Aim low and you won't be disappointed. Edging past her, I look without looking. I check her out, and she smells good, like some kind of dessert, like a baked pie, like a pumpkin pie with that red-brown spices on top. Better yet, the beer bottle in her mouth turns to follow me as I walk down the aisle to the bar and order her around. And it's not as if we're the last boy and girl in the whole world. A bunch of other people are drinking at the plastic tables going to Lollapalooza, from the look of their dreads and tie-dye. I walk all the way to the most faraway table from her, but this hottie watches me go all the way. You know the feeling. When somebody's watching, you can't take one step without stumbling, especially on a moving around train. I go to take a drink as the train turns a corner, and I spill beer down my striped cowboy shirt. I'm pretending to watch the trees going by outside the window, but from a secret agent angle, I'm watching her reflection in the glass, and she's still watching me. The only time she looks away is when she steps up to the bar and gives the bartender some money, and he gives her another beer, and then her reflection is getting bigger and bigger until it's life-sized, and she's standing next to my table and says, "Hi," and something else. And I say, "What?" And she points at my cowboy shirt, at the beer spilled there, and she says, "I like your buttons, shiny." I tuck my chin and look down at the pearl-colored snaps. They're not buttons, they're snaps. But I don't want to scotch this moment. And right from the get-go, I notice that she puts her fingers in her mouth sometimes. Okay, she puts her fingers in her mouth a lot. And she uses a breathy little girl voice with some baby talk words like buschetti instead of spaghetti, and skizzers in place of scissors. But for a regulation hottie, that's just textbook being sexy. She gives me a wink and licks the tip of her tongue around her lips, and with the wet still shining on them, she says, "I'm Britney Spears." She is such a tease. Sure, she's a little loaded, impaired. By now, we're both drinking those little bottles of tequila, but it's not as if we're driving this train. No, she's not Britney Spears, but she is the same caliber of hot. And it's clear that she's pulling my pud, but in a good way. And you just need to look at her to know all you need to know. The only chance I have is to hold on and keep flirting back and buying the drinks. She asks me where I'm headed, and I tell her Lollapalooza. She's walking her fingers up the front of my shirt, her fingertips stepping from snap to snap, from my belt up to my throat, then walking herself back down, and I'm hoping that she can't feel how hard this makes my heart beat. And she is such a flirt, with her green eyes cutting from side to side, or peeking up at me from under her long fluttering eyelashes, and she must be beers and beers ahead of me, because she keeps forgetting to end her sentences. And sometimes she points at something speeding by outside the window and she shouts, "A dog!" Or one time she sees a car waiting at a rail crossing and Britt screams, "Slug bug!" and clobbers my shoulder with her fistful of Hello Kitty and Mickey Mouse rings. And secretly, I hope I have that bruise for the rest of my life. And we go to Lollapalooza, and we pitch my tent. And Britt is so drunk that when she wakes up the next morning, she's still drunk. And no matter how much doobie I smoke, I'm having trouble keeping up. And maybe it's because Britt's so skinny, but she seems to cop a buzz without drinking for hours, like maybe she's getting a contact high from my secondhand smoke. Our whole Lollapalooza is like the kind of beautiful classic romance that you would pay to jerk off to on the internet. But it's happening to me. And we're dating for 6 months, all the way through Christmas, through Britt moving her stuff into my apartment. And I keep expecting Britt to wake up sober one morning. And she still hasn't. We go to eat Thanksgiving at my mom's place, and I have to explain. It's not that Britt is a finicky eater, but the reason she's so skinny is she only likes to eat a zucchini squash cut in half lengthwise and hollowed down the middle to make a miniature Iroquois dugout canoe with knife scratches on the outside that look like Indian writing, and a whole tribe of little braves carved out of raw carrot, but with green peas for their heads, lined up and rowing the war canoe across a dinner plate covered with a thick layer of chocolate syrup. And you'd be surprised how many restaurants don't have that particular item. Not on their regular menu. So most days, Britt has to make it herself, and that takes half a day. And then she has to play with it on the living room carpet for an hour. And that's why she never seems to gain an ounce. And my mom's just half stoked to see me dating again. And nothing you can smoke or shoot will ever get you as high as you will feel walking down the street holding hands with a supermodel, total stone-cold fox like my Brit. Guys driving down the street in their Ferrari Testarossa, guys with a six-pack abs and the steroid pecs. For the first time in my life, they have nothing over me. I am walking down the street with Brittany, and she is the prize that every guy is trying so hard to win. And the only buzzkill is how every Romeo comes to sniff a circle around her, trying to grab her in an eye lock and giving her tits his best Pepsodent toothpaste smile. And this one time riding on a bus, a pack of these Romeos stand themselves around where Britt and I are sitting in the back of the bus. Britt likes to sit on the aisle, right over the back wheel, so she can see to punch me first when there's a Volkswagen. And this one big Romeo comes to stand with his crotch situated at her eye level. And when the bus hits a pothole, maybe his hip brushes against her shoulder until Britt looks up at him, talking around her fingers in her mouth. Brittany says, "Hello, big boy." And that's just how Britt can be, friendly. And she winks and waves her wet fingers for the Romeo to lean down. And he looks around to make sure his competition is clocking his good luck. And this Romeo squats down to Britt's eye level, his face all bedroom smirk. And maybe because she's trying to make me jealous, Britt says to this Romeo, her smoking hot green eyes look at him, and she asks, "Do you want to see a magic trick?" And all the other Romeos perk up with looks that prove that they're all listening. And Britt takes her fingers out of her mouth, and she slides her wet fingers down inside the front of her pants, grinding her fingers around inside the skin-tight crotch of her jeans. And the back half of our bus gets so quiet with their watching her fingers wrestle behind her stone-washed denim zipper. And you can see these Romeos swallow their Adam apples going up and down with all their extra spit, and their eyeballs bulging like horny boners. And as fast as clobbering a slug bug, Brittany yanks something out of her pants and she yells, "Magic trick!" She swings this thing shouting, "Puppet show!" And swinging from her hand is something on a little string. Like a tea bag, only bigger.